The morning rain drummed against the courthouse windows in Leicester. Emma Johnson, a white judge in her early 50s, sat behind her heavy wooden desk. She had been hearing cases since dawn. Now it was nearly noon, and she was tired. The next case file landed on her desk with a thud. She picked it up and read the charge. Illegal dumping in protected wetlands. The defendant was a black woman named Maria Davidson. Emma sighed and put on her reading glasses. "Bring in the next case," she called to her clerk. The courtroom door opened. Maria Davidson walked in wearing a dirty raincoat and carrying a large bag. Her shoes left muddy footprints on the clean floor. Emma frowned as she watched her approach the bench. "Miss Davidson," Emma began, reading from the file. "You stand accused of dumping waste in Greenfield Wetlands, a protected nature area. The police found you there at night with suspicious equipment. How do you plead?" Maria stood straight, looking directly at the judge. "Not guilty, Your Honor. I was there for legitimate research work." Emma raised her eyebrows. "Research work? At midnight in the rain, with plastic containers and digging tools?" "Yes, Your Honor," Maria replied calmly. "I'm collecting water and soil samples to test for pollution. Someone has been dumping industrial waste in that wetland for months." Emma put down the file and leaned forward. "Miss Davidson, do you have any proof of this so-called research? Any permits? Documentation?" Maria hesitated. "I work independently, Your Honor. I don't need permits to collect samples. I've been studying that wetland for 6 months. Without proper authorization?" Emma's voice grew stern. "Are you a scientist? Do you work for a university or environmental agency?" "I have a degree in environmental science from Manchester University," Maria said proudly. "But I work on my own now." Emma shook her head. She had heard many stories like this before. People made up excuses to avoid taking responsibility for breaking the law. "Miss Davidson, Greenfield Wetlands is protected by law. No one is allowed to disturb it without permission." "I understand that, Your Honor," Maria replied. "But I wasn't disturbing it, I was trying to save it." "Save it?" Emma's voice dripped with skepticism. "From what exactly?" "From the chemicals being dumped there illegally," Maria explained. "The water is turning colors it shouldn't be. The plants are dying. The birds have stopped nesting there." Emma looked at Maria's muddy clothes and worn shoes. "And you decided to take matters into your own hands?" "No one else was investigating," Maria said quietly. "I wrote to the city council 3 times. They said they would look into it, but nothing happened." Emma opened her mouth to respond, but the court clerk approached her bench. "Your Honor, there's someone here who wants to speak about this case. It's Dr. Peter Wilson from the Environmental Protection Agency." Emma looked up surprised. "Dr. Wilson, why?" "He says it's urgent, Your Honor," the clerk whispered. Emma looked at her watch. "This court will recess for 15 minutes. She banged her gavel and stood up. As she walked to her chambers, she glanced back at Maria, who remained standing, calmly at the defendant's table. In her office, Emma paced behind her desk. This case was becoming complicated. She had seen many similar situations where people claimed to be doing good while breaking laws. But something about Maria's confidence bothered her. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called out. Dr. Peter Wilson entered, a tall man with graying hair and thick glasses. Emma had known him professionally for years. He worked with the government on environmental issues. "Peter, what brings you here? And why are you involved in this case?" Emma asked. Peter sat down in the chair opposite her desk. "I need to tell you about Maria Davidson," he began. "She's not just some random person. She's one of the most respected environmental scientists in this region." Emma felt her stomach drop. "What do you mean?" "Maria worked for our agency for 5 years. She has published papers on wetland preservation. She left to start her own consulting business to help communities that can't afford environmental testing." Emma sat down slowly. "Are you saying she really was doing research last night?" "Absolutely," Peter nodded. "I've seen her preliminary findings on Greenfield Wetlands. She's discovered evidence of illegal dumping that could destroy the entire ecosystem. Why didn't she come to you first? Emma asked, feeling confused. She did. But our agency is understaffed. It takes months to process requests for official investigations. Maria was worried the damage would be irreversible by then. Emma felt heat rising to her face. She had been so quick to judge. Why isn't any of this in her file? Because she was working independently. No official permits were needed for preliminary sample collection. She was planning to bring her findings to us this week. Emma stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the rain continued to fall. I need to go back to court, she said quietly. As Peter left, Emma thought about how wrong she had been. She had looked at Maria's muddy clothes and assumed she was making excuses. She had focused on the letter of the law instead of understanding the situation. Taking a deep breath, Emma returned to her courtroom. Maria still stood at the defendant's table, patient and dignified despite Emma's harsh questioning. Court is back in session, Emma announced as she sat down. She looked at Maria with new eyes, seeing not a lawbreaker, but a dedicated scientist, trying to protect the environment. The courtroom was quiet as Emma Johnson returned to her bench. She could see Maria Davidson standing calmly, but she noticed something different now. Maria's muddy clothes didn't look suspicious anymore. They looked like the clothes of someone who worked hard outdoors. Emma picked up her gavel but didn't bang it. Instead, she set it down gently. Miss Davidson, she began, her voice softer than before. I've just spoken with Dr. Peter Wilson from the Environmental Protection Agency. Maria's eyes widened slightly. She hadn't expected this. He tells me you are indeed an environmental scientist, Emma continued, a well-respected one. The other people in the courtroom began to whisper. The police officers who had arrested Maria looked at each other with surprise. Your Honor, Maria said carefully, I only wanted to help save the wetlands. Emma nodded. She felt embarrassed about how she had treated Maria earlier. Dr. Wilson explained that you were collecting samples to investigate illegal dumping. Is this correct? Yes, Your Honor, Maria replied. I've spent 6 months documenting changes in the water and soil. Someone is poisoning the wetlands with industrial chemicals. Emma looked at the police report again. The officers found you with plastic containers and tools. They thought you were dumping waste. I understand the confusion, Maria said. But those containers held my soil and water samples. The tools were for collecting them properly. One of the police officers stood up. Your Honor, we saw her near the drainage pipes at night. It looked suspicious. Because that's where the pollution is coming from, Maria explained. Those drainage pipes connect to 3 factories on the east side of town. I needed water samples from that exact location. Emma felt a knot forming in her stomach. As a judge, she prided herself on being fair. But today, she had judged Maria based on appearances. She had seen a black woman in muddy clothes and assumed the worst. Dr. Wilson mentioned you used to work for the Environmental Protection Agency, Emma said. Yes, for 5 years, Maria confirmed. I left to start my own business helping communities that couldn't afford environmental testing. Why would you do that? Emma asked, genuinely curious. Maria smiled sadly. Because places like Greenfield often get ignored. The wetlands are in a poor neighborhood. When residents complained about the smell and sick animals, no one investigated. The courtroom was completely silent now. Everyone was listening to Maria's words. I grew up 3 blocks from those wetlands, Maria continued. As a child, I used to play there. The water was clear. Fish jumped. Birds sang. Now it's dying and no one cares because it's in the wrong part of town. Emma felt tears forming in her eyes. She blinked them away quickly. Judges weren't supposed to cry in court. Show me your findings, Emma said quietly. Maria opened her large bag and pulled out folders of documents. She approached the bench with permission. Emma took the papers and studied them carefully. The first page showed photographs of the wetlands. One picture was labeled 2010 and showed a beautiful natural area. The next picture, labeled Now, showed dark water and dying plants. The next pages contained scientific measurements. Emma didn't understand all the technical terms, but she could read the words toxic levels clearly. These chemicals, Maria explained, pointing to the charts, are used in fabric dyeing. 2 of the 3 factories near the drainage pipes produce textiles. Emma looked up from the papers. How many people live near these wetlands? About 500 families, Maria answered. Mostly immigrant families from Pakistan and India. They work in those same factories. Emma felt anger rising inside her. Not at Maria, but at the situation. People were being poisoned by the very places that employed them. Have you shown these findings to anyone? Emma asked. I tried, Maria said. The city council said they'd look into it. The Environmental Protection Agency said they'd schedule an investigation. But months passed, and nothing happened. Emma handed the papers back to Maria. She looked at the police officers. Did you see these documents when you arrested Dr. Davidson? The officers looked uncomfortable. No, Your Honor. We just saw the equipment and assumed. You assumed. Emma finished for them. She turned back to Maria. I owe you an apology, Dr. Davidson. I also made assumptions. Thank you, Your Honor, Maria said graciously. But we have a bigger problem now, Emma continued. If what you found is true, we have an environmental crime happening in our city. It is true, Maria said firmly. I have water samples in my laboratory that prove it. Emma thought for a moment. As a judge, she could dismiss this case easily, but as a person, she couldn't ignore what she'd learned. This court finds you not guilty of illegal dumping, Emma announced formally. All charges are dropped. The courtroom relaxed a little. Maria smiled with relief. But, Emma continued, I'm requesting that you present your full findings to this court tomorrow. I'm also inviting city officials and environmental authorities to attend. Maria looked surprised. Your Honor, if a crime is being committed, we need to address it, Emma said. You've worked too hard on this research to have it ignored. Emma banged her gavel. Court is adjourned until tomorrow morning. As people filed out of the courtroom, Emma remained at her bench. She watched Maria pack her papers carefully. This case had shown her something important about herself and about justice. The end. The next morning, the courtroom was packed. Emma Johnson had never seen so many people at a hearing before. City officials sat in the front row. Environmental authorities filled the second row. News reporters stood against the back wall with cameras. Even the mayor had come. Maria Davidson sat at a table with her research materials spread out carefully. She had spent the entire night preparing her presentation. Dark circles under her eyes showed she hadn't slept much, but her voice was clear and strong as she began to speak. Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen, Maria started, Greenfield wetlands are dying. The evidence I'm about to show proves that illegal dumping has been happening for at least 3 years. She clicked a button on her laptop, and a large screen showed photographs of the wetlands. The first pictures were from old newspapers, showing families picnicking by clean water, children swinging on ropes into the lake, birds nesting in healthy trees. Then the pictures changed. The water turned brown, then black. Dead fish floated on the surface. Trees stood bare even in summer. These are test results from water samples I collected last month, Maria continued, showing charts and numbers. The levels of copper, lead, and synthetic dyes are 100 times higher than safe standards. The mayor shifted uncomfortably in his seat. City officials whispered to each other. I traced these chemicals to their source, Maria said. They match exactly with waste products from 2 textile factories, Wilson Manufacturing and Thompson Textiles. Emma watched as the factory owners' faces changed color. They hadn't expected to be named publicly. How did the chemicals get into the wetlands? Someone asked from the audience. Maria clicked to another slide. It showed underground pipes and drainage maps. These factories use old drainage pipes that connect directly to Greenfield Creek. The creek flows into the wetlands. But those pipes are inspected regularly, one city official said. When was the last inspection? Maria asked. The official shuffled through papers. Let me see. 2019. 5 years ago, Maria stated. In that time, cracks developed in the pipes. The wastewater leaks directly into the soil and eventually reaches the wetlands. Emma leaned forward. Dr. Davidson, have you documented how this affects the community? Yes, Your Honor. Maria nodded. She showed new slides with information about health problems in the neighborhood. In the past 2 years, hospital records show a 40% increase in respiratory problems among residents. Children have higher rates of asthma. A woman in the audience stood up. Your Honor, may I speak? Emma nodded. Please identify yourself. I'm Mrs. Hassan. I live on Baker Street next to the wetlands. My children play there. My son developed asthma last year, and my daughter has skin problems the doctors can't explain. Other residents began standing up. An elderly man said his fishing business died because all the fish were gone. A young father explained that property values had dropped 50% since the smell got worse. Thank you, Emma said. Please be seated. The factory owners asked to speak next. Mr. Wilson stood up nervously. Your Honor, our factory follows all environmental regulations. We have permits. Show me your waste disposal records for the past year, Maria challenged him. Mr. Wilson's lawyer whispered urgently in his ear. After a long pause, the lawyer said, We'll need time to locate those documents. The tension in the room grew thick. Emma could see some people getting angry. Others looked worried. Dr. Davidson, Emma said, what would it take to fix this problem? 3 steps, Maria answered immediately. First, stop the leaking pipes. Second, clean the contaminated soil and water. Third, monitor the factory's waste disposal properly. And the cost? The mayor asked. Approximately £2 million, Maria replied. But if we wait longer, the cost will double. The wetlands might never recover. Emma noticed something interesting happening in the courtroom. The anger was turning into something else. People were starting to think about solutions instead of blame. Your Honor, said Dr. Wilson from the Environmental Agency, I request permission to take immediate action. My team can start testing the drainage pipes this afternoon. Granted, Emma said. One of the factory owners raised his hand hesitantly. Your Honor, Thompson Textiles is willing to pay for new pipes. We didn't realize the old ones were leaking. His competitor, Mr. Wilson, looked nervous but finally nodded. Wilson Manufacturing will contribute too. We don't want to harm our community. Emma felt hope rising in the courtroom. Sometimes justice wasn't about punishment. Sometimes it was about people coming together to fix what was broken. Mrs. Hassan stood up again. Dr. Davidson, thank you for not giving up on our neighborhood. Maria's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled. This is my neighborhood too. Emma banged her gavel gently. This hearing will continue tomorrow. I want detailed plans from the factories and the Environmental Agency. Dr. Davidson, I'm appointing you as a special consultant to oversee this project. As people filed out of the courtroom, Emma saw something beautiful. Residents were talking to factory owners. City officials were exchanging phone numbers with environmental experts. The mayor was shaking hands with Mrs. Hassan. Emma remained at her bench for a while after everyone left. Yesterday, she had been ready to fine Maria for a crime she didn't commit. Today, she was helping lead a community effort to save the wetlands. She picked up Maria's photographs again. The pictures of clean water and green trees gave her hope. Maybe they could make Greenfield wetlands beautiful again. The end. 3 weeks after the hearing, Emma Johnson walked carefully along the muddy path toward Greenfield wetlands. She wore rubber boots and carried a clipboard. Maria Davidson walked beside her, pointing out different areas where work had already begun. See those yellow markers? Maria asked. Those show where we found the highest levels of contamination. Emma nodded, writing notes on her clipboard. As the court-appointed supervisor of the cleanup project, she visited the site every Tuesday and Thursday. They stopped at a section where workers were digging up old pipes. The rusty metal showed obvious cracks and holes. Orange cones surrounded the work area to keep people away. These pipes haven't been replaced in 50 years, said Tom Richards, the construction foreman. No wonder they were leaking. Emma watched as workers carefully removed contaminated soil. It was packed into special containers that would be transported to a treatment facility. The process was slow and expensive, but necessary. How much soil needs to be removed? Emma asked. About 400 tons, Maria replied. But we're making good progress. The factories are paying for everything as they promised. They walked to the main water testing station. Here, Maria and her team collected samples daily. Clear plastic tubes held water from different parts of the wetlands. Some were still brown and murky. Others were starting to clear. The copper levels are down 30%, Maria reported excitedly. The fish are even beginning to return to the creek. Emma smiled. This was good news. She remembered the day of the hearing when everything seemed hopeless. Now, actual progress was happening. They continued their walk to the community garden. This was Emma's favorite part of the project. Residents had turned a small area into vegetable gardens while they waited for the wetlands to heal. Mrs. Hassan was there with her children planting tomatoes. Good morning, Your Honor, Mrs. Hassan called out. Look, my son's asthma is getting better. The air feels cleaner already. Emma waved back. She noticed how different the neighborhood looked now. People were outside more. Children played in areas that had been closed before. There was a sense of hope that hadn't been there a month ago. Their next stop was the factory site. Mr. Wilson met them at the gate. He looked nervous but determined. Your Honor, Dr. Davidson, come see our new filtration system, he said. Inside the factory, they saw shiny new equipment. Pipes now ran through a series of filters and treatment tanks. We can't just dump anymore, Mr. Wilson explained. Everything gets filtered and tested before it goes anywhere. It costs more, but it's the right thing to do. Maria took water samples from the new system. She tested them on the spot with a portable kit. The readings are excellent, Mr. Wilson. Well below safety limits. Emma wrote this down carefully. The factories were keeping their promises. This was important for her report to the court. They visited Thompson Textiles next. The owner, Sarah Thompson, had installed even more advanced equipment. We're actually saving money now, she explained. The new system recycles water. We use 70% less than before. As they left the factories, Emma thought about how people could change when given the chance. The factory owners had been afraid at first. Now they were proud of their improvements. Their last stop was the community center. Inside, a group of teenagers were working on a school project about the wetlands. Emma recognized some of them from the neighborhood. We're making a website to monitor the wetlands, a girl named Amy explained. Dr. Davidson is teaching us how to test water quality. Another student showed Emma their website design. We update it every week with new data. People from all over England are following our progress. Maria beamed with pride. These kids are the future of environmental protection. They understand how important this work is. Emma watched the teenagers working together. Some had parents who worked in the factories. Others lived near the wetlands. They were all united in wanting to save their neighborhood. As the sun began to set, Emma and Maria sat on a bench overlooking the wetlands. The view was still not perfect, but it was better than before. A few water birds had returned to nest. You know, Emma said, I've been a judge for 20 years. I thought I understood justice, but this project taught me something new. What's that? Maria asked. Justice isn't just about punishment. Sometimes it's about bringing people together to fix problems. When I first saw you in court, I only saw someone breaking a law. I didn't see someone trying to help. Maria nodded thoughtfully. And I saw judges as people who didn't care about communities like mine. But you proved me wrong too. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sunset paint colors across the water. A fish jumped, creating ripples that spread outward. How long until the wetlands are fully restored? Emma asked. The scientists say 2 to 3 years for major improvement, but we'll see positive changes every month. Maria paused. What happens to your role after the cleanup is finished? Emma smiled. I'm thinking about creating a permanent environmental court position, someone who can help communities fight pollution faster, someone who can prevent problems like this from happening elsewhere. That's wonderful, Maria said. As they walked back to their cars, Emma felt grateful for the unexpected journey this case had taken her on. She had gained more than just knowledge about environmental science. She had gained a new perspective on her role as a judge and as a community member. The security guard waved as they reached the parking lot. "Evening, ladies. Making good progress out there?" "We are," Emma replied. "Thanks to everyone's hard work." Driving home, Emma thought about tomorrow's court report. She would recommend that the cleanup project receive additional funding. She would praise the community's cooperation. And she would suggest ways to help other neighborhoods facing similar problems. 2. And 6 months had passed since Maria Davidson first stood in Emma Johnson's courtroom. Now they stood together before another judge in a much larger courtroom in London. This time they weren't fighting each other. They were working as a team. "Your Honor," Emma began, "Dr. Maria Davidson and I come before you today representing the people of Greenfield, Leicester. Our story began with a misunderstanding but has become something remarkable. The courtroom was filled with people who had traveled from Leicester. Mrs. Hassan sat in the front row with her children. Factory owners lined the second row. City officials and environmental experts filled the rest of the space. Maria stepped forward with her presentation materials. "Your Honor, we've prepared documentation proving that community involvement in environmental law can create lasting change." She clicked her remote and pictures appeared on the screen. The first showed the courtroom in Leicester 6 months ago, when she was accused of illegal dumping. The next showed the wetlands as they were then, polluted and dying. "These are the same wetlands today." Maria clicked again. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Clear water reflected blue sky. Green plants lined the banks. Birds flew overhead. Children played on safe, marked paths. Judge Anderson, a distinguished older woman, leaned forward. "This transformation is remarkable. Please explain how it happened." Emma and Maria took turns telling the story. They described the illegal dumping, the community suffering, and the initial misunderstanding that brought them together. They explained how fear turned to cooperation and blame turned to solution finding. "The cleanup cost was £2 million, Emma reported. "But the results are priceless. Hospital visits for respiratory problems have decreased by 60%. Property values have increased. And most importantly, we've created a model for other communities to follow." Judge Anderson studied the documents carefully. "This court was concerned about environmental discrimination in Leicester. You seem to have addressed the problem directly." Maria nodded enthusiastically. "With your permission, we'd like to propose something bigger." Both women looked at each other and smiled. They had discussed this moment many times. "We request the court's support to create the Community Environmental Justice Program," Emma explained. "It would provide free legal and scientific help to any neighborhood facing pollution problems." "How would this work?" Judge Anderson asked. Maria stepped forward. "Environmental scientists would work with local judges to investigate pollution claims quickly. Communities wouldn't have to wait years for help. We have 15 scientists ready to volunteer their time, and 5 experienced judges willing to supervise the program," Emma added, "including myself. We've learned that acting fast saves both money and lives." The judge's clerk whispered something to Judge Anderson. She nodded and turned back to Emma and Maria. "I've just been informed that similar problems exist in 9 other English communities. Your timing is perfect." Mr. Wilson, the factory owner, stood up. "Your Honor, may I speak?" "Please." Judge Anderson gestured. "I want the court to know that our factories support this program. We're willing to help fund it. We never want to poison our neighbors again." Mrs. Hassan's hand shot up. "And I represent the residents. We promise to work with the program, not against it. We've learned that cooperation works better than fighting." Young Amy, the teenager who created the Wetlands website, couldn't contain herself. "Your Honor, our website now has visitors from 20 countries. Other kids want to monitor their environments too. Can the program include education?" Judge Anderson smiled at Amy's enthusiasm. "That's an excellent suggestion." Emma's heart felt light as she listened. The courtroom buzzed with positive energy. This was justice working properly, bringing people together, solving problems, and creating hope. "I see you've brought several documents," Judge Anderson said. "Are these your action plans?" "Yes, Your Honor," Maria replied. "We've outlined everything: legal procedures, scientific standards, community involvement guidelines, and budget requirements." They spent the next hour reviewing the plans. Judge Anderson asked detailed questions. The Lester Group answered confidently. They had prepared thoroughly. Finally, Judge Anderson removed her glasses and cleaned them slowly. Everyone waited in silence. "In all my years on the bench," she began, "I've rarely seen such a complete solution to a complex problem. You've turned conflict into cooperation. You've proven that environmental justice doesn't just happen, it requires work from everyone." She put her glasses back on and picked up her gavel. "This court approves the Community Environmental Justice Program. I'm ordering immediate implementation throughout England." The courtroom erupted in applause. Emma and Maria hugged tightly. Mrs. Hassan wiped tears from her eyes. Even the stern-looking factory owners smiled. "Before we adjourn," Judge Anderson added, "I want to say something personal. Judge Johnson, Dr. Davidson, you've shown us what justice truly looks like. It's not about blame. It's about solutions. It's not about choosing sides. It's about bringing people together." As they left the London courthouse, Emma and Maria walked down the steps to meet the celebration. City officials announced they would rename Greenfield Wetlands as Unity Wetlands to remember how the community came together. Maria turned to Emma on the steps. "6 months ago, I was afraid to trust judges, and I was quick to judge without understanding," Emma replied. "We both learned." They looked at the crowd below. Factory owners chatted with residents, children played together. Environmental scientists explained their work to curious teenagers. The mayor shook hands with Mrs. Hassan. This was what change looked like, not perfect but beautiful in its imperfection. Not easy but worth the effort. Not ending with punishment, but beginning with understanding. As the sun set over London, Emma and Maria smiled at the future they had helped create. Their story would inspire other communities to fight for environmental justice. Their wetlands would serve as proof that one misunderstanding could lead to extraordinary positive change. The teenagers gathered around them, eager to hear about what came next. Emma and Maria exchanged knowing glances. Their work was just beginning. The future belonged to all of them working together, and somewhere in Leicester, the Unity Wetlands sparkled cleanly under the evening sky, home to returning birds and a community that had learned the power of working together toward justice. The end.